that his top two landing spots are Phoenix and Miami. Big three of KD, Kyrie, and Harden never really coming to fruition. A grand total of 16 games played together, and we never really got to see the Simmons swap late last season either. Here's a look at the slightly more dynamic duo. Kyrie Irving's numbers not included here. KD specifically making a difference and often having to carry the load on his lonesome through two seasons, but likely to say bye-bye, BKNY. And for more on the ever-changing landscape, we say hello to the best here in the Big Ten, which is now a bi-coastal distinction, but that's another segment for another day, TD. Tim Doyle in the mix. TD here to talk KD and beyond. Durant cutting his losses here, electing to move on from Brooklyn. So let's start by giving the man what he wants. What's a better fit for the all-world scorer? Phoenix, that's next to a Hall of Fame facilitator and a sharpshooter, or Miami with perhaps more depth and balance around him?
Oh, what a goofy offseason this has been, huh? It's almost like taking a page from the old Oprah Winfrey. He requested a trade. He requested a trade. He requested a trade. No one's getting a free car here, but a better fit between these two franchises just because Phoenix has established stars in Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And now you pair Kevin Durant. I don't know, Joe. How does this all happen? Like, how do you have all these guys? Who do you get rid of? Like, who else is able to fill out a roster right now? But yeah, it's the wild situation. That's where to be a general manager and bird rights and contracts and who's getting paid what. But I thought it was going to be a disaster. It was a disaster, and now we officially blow that thing up in Brooklyn. So who knows, right? I mean, this is like you're still on the team. Mm-hmm. So this would be amazing, Joe, if they just go, I'm not leaving. Like if they go like Wolf of Wall Street, like I'm not leaving. Yeah, the place goes good and then they're back playing again. So it's the Nets. I'm not surprised if anything happens. The only thing that makes me smile all the time is the Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when he's in the empty room by himself. Is that now Ben Simmons hanging out in Brooklyn by himself?
I mean, that's what it's looking like right now. Andre Drummond headed to Chicago. Kyrie likely to want out the door if this KD shoe does fall. So plenty still to figure out here, but there is surely a story to be told about the timing of Durant's request following Kyrie's opt-in. Irving now reportedly doing everything in his power to force his way to L.A. to rejoin forces with LeBron. Tim, in your eyes, is that the move that keeps Kai most relevant and competitive, or is there another spot that makes more sense?
Yeah, that place just makes sense, And when you talk about Kyrie Irving making sense, hard to do sometimes, Joe. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't really go hand in hand with one another. So he's an amazing scorer. There's no doubt about it. He had an unbelievable year when he was playing. I mean, he gets you almost 30 points a game. We've seen him have success with LeBron James. I want to watch the soap opera. Don't you, Joe?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, it could go one of two ways. You're talking about a championship contender or a criminal underperformer like we saw last season. And in that case, Kyrie comes squarely under those crosshairs once again for some different reasons. But TD, when you look at that team, what comes to mind? An AD who can't stay on the court, an aging LeBron entering season number 20, I believe it is, and his old running mate that they did have their tiffs in the past, did have championships as well. What comes to mind when you look at that big three?
Yeah, basically Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins at the end of Shawshank, right? It's like Kyrie coming back to town, and there's LeBron sitting on the beach there in California being like, let's run this back again. What are they going to do with Russell Westbrook? He's still on the team, right? I mean, this is like utter chaos. So I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I do know this. When someone doesn't want to play in a city, 9.9 out of 10 in the NBA, you get moved. And, so I really don't know where Kyrie's head is at. If it wants to be in LA, he's mentally going to be already checked out of Brooklyn. So they're going to probably have to move him anywhere. And it just seems like of all the places that could fit, playing with LeBron and the Lakers could.
Yeah, it would be an easy, low learning curve there for LeBron and his former running mate here. The two faces of player empowerment in KD and Kyrie empowering themselves in opposite directions. Let's get on to some other storylines here, not in Brooklyn. Sample size notwithstanding, the Pels, they do lock up the face of their franchise through the 2028 season. Zion Williamson agreeing to a $231 million rookie max extension. On one hand, it's a guy who's averaged north of 25 points and 7 rebounds per game throughout his 3-season career. On the other, He's played in a grand total of 85 games over those 3 seasons, Tim Doyle. What are your expectations of Zion moving forward with the bag now secured?
Yeah, I think that he has potential to be one of the top 5 players in the NBA. But potential is the key word. I've called a handful of his games, and when he is at full strength, he's essentially unstoppable. How long will this last, Joe? I have my doubts at this weight and this body size that he can play this style, in his mid-30s and stuff, but he's not in his mid-30s. Like, it's now or never. Like, you go pay him now because now's the time that he could reach the zenith of his career. And there was one game I called last year against the Jazz, and that was when the Jazz had the best record in the Western Conference, and he was by far the best player on the court. And during the third quarter, when he absolutely took over the game, he was actually the best player in the NBA. For that one individual quarter, like, the wow factor to his game is unbelievable, but what else is unbelievable is just on the court. Like, you can't make the club in the tub. So he has to do a better job of taking care of his body. And it's easy for me to say, I'm sitting in my mom's basement, I'm 39 years old, and I drive a minivan. I know I made mistakes with my nutrition, but here's a guy that if he really puts in the work on his body, I think he can win an MVP in the next 5 years. So I don't know if he can get in that mindset. If you handed me $200 million as a early 20-year-old, good luck finding me. Woohoo! On Bourbon Street, baby. So that's why, once again, I'm sitting in my mom's basement. But he has that kind of potential. It would be wasted talent, like Robert De Niro said in A Bronx Tale, if he never materializes that talent, because he could single-handedly be the best player in the entire NBA.
Zion only had 3 fingers. He had 5 games, but 3 fingers, Tim Doyle. The dismantling of the Utah Jazz continuing on Friday with the franchise dealing former 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, and your reaction already tells the story here. He's headed to the Timberwolves for, stay with me here, Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Bolmaro, Walker Kessler, and 4 first-round picks. With all due respect to the French rejection here, TD, help me make sense of this transaction we're seeing on our screens.
Yeah, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they got fleeced. Okay? Congratulations to the Utah Jazz. You know who runs their basketball operations? Danny Ainge. Didn't he do this in Boston and was able to secure guys like, I don't know, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown? And we've seen this Jazz movie, right? We saw the Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles experiment. You added Bogdanovich. Really good regular season team. But there was something about that playoff series against Dallas where you luck into no Luka Doncic in game number 2. Games 1 and 2. And Joe, they seemed disinterested. One Joe Musso said jump on the Mavericks, even though they're down 1-0 in that series. And we had plus 500 there. So Rudy Gobert is an outstanding regular season basketball player. Anybody who knows anything about the NBA, the regular season is different than the postseason. And they have the ability, other teams, to put Rudy on an island to guard pick and rolls. Sometimes you have to take him out of the game. So even though he's one of the most dominant centers of this generation, he can't play the style of play the way the NBA is played now, where the Warriors are trotting 6'6" Draymond Green out there at center. So the whole game has evolved. I don't understand why he did this. Let's talk about what Utah was able to do. No free agents want to go play for the Jazz. None. No big-time guys. So the fact that they got all of these draft picks, this is the perfect situation for them. They can retreat. Now they'll dump Donovan Mitchell, get some more draft picks, and then you start all over again.
A bit of a Oklahoma City Sam Presti 1.0 first step of that process, at least perhaps happening in Utah. And I mean, pay-per-view, I'll pay whatever the price is, get cameras and microphones in that Timberwolves locker room. We'll see how all of those personalities mesh throughout the season as well. Let's talk about the Celtics here, who quietly retooling their supporting cast as well. They add Danilo Gallinari, they trade for Malcolm Brogdon. That trade is going to send Daniel Tice, a couple others, back to Indy along with Boston's first-round pick next year. Pretty evident that this Celtics team wasn't lacking a whole lot, losing in 6 to the Dubs, maybe a bit more playmaking down the stretch. How does Brogdon move the needle here for you in this deal with Boston?
I think he's a viable candidate to be Sixth Man of the Year next year in the NBA. Now you go to the bench, and that was something they were clearly lacking in the NBA Finals, was scoring power. And Brogdon has that. He also has triple-double capabilities, but I think his role is going to change just because, on the Pacers he was asked to do a lot more, and now he could really be the guy there on the second team. If you're a Celtic fan, you got to love the additions. They're adding, parts of their game that they were weak at in the offseason. That's what a championship caliber team does. Like, I'll say this to the end of the year. They were the more talented team in that Warriors-Celtics NBA Finals. What they didn't have was that basketball IQ and that basketball savvy and that experience of being there before. I thought that really showed, especially defensively with all the turnovers that Tatum and Brown had. The Warriors were able to take them out of the game. I still think Boston had better players. You see right now the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. I love the moves that they made. I thought they added strategically pieces that made sense. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, figure out the sense of the Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. Figure out the sense of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. Like, I'm trying to figure out the sense of all this, right? They still only play one basketball, don't they?
This is not the NBA draft. This is not best available. We are building basketball teams here through trade and free agency, and we are scratching our head at a number of the decisions made over the last 48 hours. But let's talk winners and losers. Biggest winner is going to be whoever lands KD. I think that's quite obvious, especially if it's one of those two teams in Miami and Phoenix. But over the last 48, who's won NBA free agency in your eyes?
I think DeJounte Murray is a superstar. So now you pair him with Trae Young. How is that going to work out? I don't know. I really don't know. But he's long, he's rangy, he can defend, he can kind of do all the things that Trae can't do. And, Trae has that ability to play off the ball. So, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan figured out a way to play together.
Mm-hmm.
If these guys who have a high basketball IQ, both these guys can average 10 assists a game, if they figure out how to play together, and the fact that Murray can go out there and maybe cover up some of those blemishes defensively that Trae Young, isn't able to provide. The only thing is, like, DeJounte Murray is like 115 pounds, and Trae Young is not that, svelte either. Start doing some curls, boys. Like, put on some weight in this offseason, add some weight to their frames, but this is the most intriguing move. I was really high on the Hawks last year. I thought they had the capability to get to the NBA Finals 2 years ago, Eastern Conference Finals, and they were awful. So the fact that they retooled and rolled the dice on this move, so far the early winners of free agency. But as you said it, whoever gets Durant, they're the winners.
All right, let's talk biggest loser then, because it's quite obvious that what's happening in Brooklyn right now positions them at the center of that conversation. They're about to lose 3 combined titles, 19 combined all-star bids between those two gentlemen. I mean, let's pick at the scab a little bit here, TD. If it does go the way it's directed right now, with both Kyrie and KD leaving town, who are we pointing the finger at?
That's a great question. Who thought that this was going to work? Mm-hmm. It was intriguing. I never did, because I know this. You have to have guys 5 pulling in the same direction on the same floor. It isn't just take the best players, put them all together, and then they win. There was a reason why the Spurs won all those times. The reason why the Warriors won. Like, you have to have that continuity, and it's just as important, like, off the court, that guys are pulling in the same direction. Baseball is one of those sports where you can have split personalities and stuff. Mm-hmm. But basketball, there has to be that cohesion right now. So if you have 2 of your superstars and they don't want to be in Brooklyn, they're not going to end up being in Brooklyn. So I just wish, I love what the Jazz did. The Jazz were like, all right, we took a shot. That was a great run. We're really good. We couldn't go over the hump. Retreat now, draft smart, build up there, and then, that's the proven remedy of how to build a team. Throwing money at old, aging free agents, I think that's a mistake.
Well, much like the yellow line in the NFL, the contracts in the NBA, always unofficial. Tim Doyle, many thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, let's take a look at some of those names still out there, remaining free agents. James Harden, not mentioned throughout, but available. DeAndre Ayton, restricted free agent. We'll see what the market value is and if Phoenix wants to match it. Same goes for Colin Sexton in Cleveland. TJ Warren, Dennis Schroeder, also on a list of notable remaining free agents. But just because you're under contract doesn't mean you might not be headed elsewhere.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.